Welcome to Original Being, where we explore the timeless wisdom of ancient practices and old ways of living, from holistic health and wellness to survival techniques, homesteading, and primitive skills. I'm Jillian Erice, a functional and holistic-minded physician associate and a homesteading mother of 3. I am on a quest to reconnect with this knowledge our ancestors lived by, practical skills, natural healing, and self-sufficiency in a modern world. Each episode, I'll be sharing insights, experiences, and conversations with experts and everyday people who embody this mindset. Together, we'll challenge modern conveniences, embrace hands-on learning, and rediscover the practices that have stood the test of time. Disclaimer, the information shared on this podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes only. My opinions and those of my guests are solely our own and are not affiliated with any institutions, employers, or certifications. This podcast does not provide medical advice, and any health-related decisions should be made in consultation with your personal healthcare provider. By listening, you acknowledge that you take full responsibility for your own choices and actions.
Today on Original Being, we have Cheeny Plante. Cheeny grew up in Maine. She is a former USAF SERE Specialist and Maine guide. She teaches classes at the Moose Ridge Wilderness School and also works part-time as an instructor for Owl Eyes Wilderness Survival. She has also competed on the show Naked and Afraid 3 times. She spends her summers in the White Mountains and Allagash Wilderness, and in the winter, she works in the trade business as an interior painter. Hi, Cheeny.
Hey, morning, Jillian.
So I want to start with your SERE training. I don't even know what that is, what that stands for, what that entails. So let's dive right into that.
Sure. Yeah, that's kind of where it all began. So it makes sense to start there. So
Yeah.
I joined the Air Force when I was 18 and I became a SERE Specialist when I was 19. And SERE stands for Survival, Evasion, Resistance, and Escape.
Okay.
And my job as a SERE instructor is to prepare everybody that's on the aircraft, from the pilots, flight engineers, load masters, gunners, everybody, on what to do if they ever have an in-flight emergency, and what to do if they have to bail out, ditch, or eject from the aircraft. So it's everything from leaving the aircraft to flying the parachute down to the ground safely, how to land on the ground, how to land in the water, and then how to survive wherever it is that you land. So I taught the air crew how to survive in every environment on the planet, from temperate, desert, open ocean, coastal environments, mountain environments, Arctic environments, tropical environments, you name it. We taught them everything. And we focused on some basic survival principles for shelter, fire, food, and water that could be used in any environment. And I did that for about 8 years.
How did you go? So when you joined the Air Force, did you know that you wanted to be a SERE Specialist, or did it kind of can't come as an opportunity?
No, I knew that's what I wanted to do. So when I took the ASVAB, I was given a list of jobs that I was qualified for based on how I scored, and SERE Specialist was one of them. And it just, honestly, it looked like a really cool job. I was 18 years old. I wanted to do something cool in the military because, you don't know any better when you're younger. And I saw SERE, and, you get to be in the woods all the time. You're teaching people very valuable skills. And then, they also throw in, you can go to jump school, you can go to dive school, you get the chance to learn all this extra stuff when you are a SERE Specialist. And I thought, yeah, that'd be pretty great. I can go jump out of planes and do all this fun, military traditional stuff that nobody ever really gets a chance to do anymore. And it was really hard. I didn't realize how hard it was going into it. I trained for it. I started going to the gym. I started carrying a heavy backpack and doing some ruck marches out in the woods and up and down the street, and just to get my body ready. And it was really tough. I ended up washing out the first time I went through.
What does that mean?
Washing out basically means you didn't meet the standard.
Okay.
And you failed. So for me, I was very small. When I was in high school, I guess I'm about the same height and weight. I was, about 120 pounds, 5'3", and it was really difficult, very physically strenuous job. And, there's there's one thing that we had to do that was really hard for me. I had to carry a 65-pound rucksack, and we had to do a 4-mile track in an hour. So I had to do a 15-minute mile with this heavy bag. And I want to say I failed it by like 4 or 5 minutes.
Ugh.
I was over time, and I was like, man, I can't believe I have to do all this all over again, because the ruck test is at the end. The ruck was at the end, and I remember I had failed, by minutes. And I was like, man, I can't believe I have to do all that all over again. And I was like, I want to do this job.
Yeah.
I was like, I have to try again. And so I went back through it and I made it by like 3 minutes, but I did it within the hour. That was the standard. And yeah, the rest is history. I was a SERE specialist for 8 years and I loved that job.
Well, so do you have to apply to get into that? Yeah, because I'm sure people are like, a lot of people must want to do this and not everyone gets to do it.
Not everybody gets to do it. It's pretty rigorous selection process. So, you know, you sign up with your recruiter, you pick the job that you want, and you have to do what's called a PASS test. It's a physical aptitude standard test or some acronym. You basically have to run 1.5 miles in a certain amount of time. You have to swim a certain distance in a certain amount of time, pull-ups, sit-ups, push-ups. There's a certain amount that you have to do in order to get in. And so I did the PASS test regularly with my recruiter before I went. So he made sure that I passed it with flying colors, like not just meeting the standards, but exceeding them. Because once I got into the Air Force, past basic training to SERE training, I'd have to take that test. And so he wanted to make sure that there was no question I was going to pass it once I got that far.
Yeah.
And I did. I was able to get in. I got into the 2-week selection program, which is where I ended up washing out at the end because I didn't meet the ruck march time standard. So I repeated the 2 weeks, passed, and then from there I went up to Fairchild Air Force Base in Spokane, Washington, where I waited to start the SERE Specialist technical school, which is about 6 months long. And there we learn everything that we're going to teach our students. We go through different phases of survival training that cover all the biomes. So like we would travel to, this is Washington State, so we'd go up to like the Canadian border, up in the mountains to do our Arctic and temperate survival. We would go over to the Forks in Washington, do our tropical survival out there because there's, you know, a temperate rainforest out there near Seattle. We went to Oregon to the coast to do open ocean coastal survival. We went to Yakima, Washington to do our desert training because there's a desert out there. I went to Alaska for Arctic training. So it was a long 6 months. And we had some classes in there too to, teach you how to be an instructor. So we'd have to have these mock lessons that we would teach. And, we'd start off with, a 5-minute lesson here, an hour lesson, and then it would grow into teaching a full day, teaching multiple days, and we'd all take turns. So like I'd be an instructor, and then my fellow classmates in the tech school would be my students, and we would just rotate through, and you'd be graded the whole time. So, and then, you're just constantly being tested, and they're always marking off like, okay, check, meets that standard, and anything that you failed, you'd get a chance to try one more time. And then if you didn't pass it again, you would get removed from training. You get the option to start again when the next class cycle started, or you could get reclassed into another job. So it took me about a year of some pretty intense training to graduate to become a SERE specialist. And then after that, I was a fully certified instructor. I had students. I did one class a month. It was about 3 weeks worth of work. And then you'd have a down week to rest and clean up all your gear and, all that stuff. So
What was the hardest biome that you felt like to work in?
For me, the hardest one was tropics because it rained every single day. Everything was wet. Everything. And I remember being in mud up to my knees. And that was just that was your life for 7 days. You had to live there, and it didn't matter what the temperature was for, any phase really. But I think our cutoff was like -30. They'd cancel training, or 120. They'd cancel training. So it was pretty intense. And I mean, I would be out there I missed Thanksgiving, Easter. We didn't miss Christmas, but birthdays, everything didn't matter what day it was. Like if we were training, like you were out there.
Yeah.
So for me, tropics was the hardest because you were out there in the mud. Everything was soaking wet. You could never get anything dry. And every day you had to build a shelter, you had to build a fire, you had to collect water.
Every day you had to start new?
Every day.
What? Did they destroy what you had done before?
You had to start over. You would build it and then you would tear it down. You'd get your fire going and then you would extinguish it.
Oh my gosh.
Every day we had to practice.
Wow.
Every single day. And sometimes we would do 2 shelters a day, 2 fires a day, or multiple fires a day if you got in trouble for something. And you had to get it built. We had 45 minutes to an hour, and that was the standard. And it didn't matter who you were, where you came from. It was the same for everybody. If you didn't get it, you failed for the day.
Yeah. Wow.
And that was it. And you had to try again. And you get too many failures, you're out of there.
Were there people that had made it this far and then quit when they got to some of these things?
So by the time I went through tropics training, we were at least 4 months in. And so by that time, we had gotten rid of a lot of the weak people. Because in the beginning, they really hammer you. It happens
earlier on, yeah.
Yeah, it's like, it's more intense physically. There's a lot of sleep deprivation. They keep you up with tons of tasks and assignments. You have to do, a lot of reading. You have to write reports on things. You have to do a lot of improvising where you're making your own gear. We had tons of things. And I remember having so much to do that I would work up until I had to go to morning PT at 5 a.m. There were many nights where I didn't sleep. A lot of us didn't sleep. And we'd be falling asleep like in formation on a run. People would just fall over because they fell asleep running. We were exhausted.
Yeah.
And
that takes such a toll on your body too. I mean, I can't even imagine.
Yeah. Oh, it really does. But I was young and I was able to, kind of bounce back pretty good, but I can feel it now that I'm older. But
like it's all those years of lack of sleep.
It's all those years. I know. They warned me, once you get into your 30s, you're going to feel all this. And they were right. But yeah, they did a good job of weeding out the people that were just mentally weak, because I've always been a big believer of the body follows the mind. Like if you have a strong mind, your body will follow.
Yeah.
And, I would see it countless times in all the stories I would read about prisoners of war and, survivors of just the most horrific conflicts and imprisonments. And it's amazing what the human body can do. But your biggest hurdle is your mind. So in the beginning, they just swamped us physically, mentally, and that pushed out, over 50%.
Wow.
Sometimes more.
Yeah,
And then at the end, if people failed out at the end, it was just a performance issue. It was usually people, they just didn't have what it took to be an instructor. Because not everybody can be a teacher. It's more than just regurgitating information. You are helping this person to grow in a multitude of different ways, and everybody has a different learning style. And as an instructor or a teacher, you have to be able to see that in all of your students, and you have to be able to, how do I want to word this? You have to be able to, you want them to succeed. And some people, it's a lot harder to get some people to succeed than others. And you have to read people and you have to be able to explain things very well. And teaching is not for everybody. It's like being a leader in a way, like not everybody's meant for it.
Yeah, absolutely. What about mosquitoes in the tropical? Are you in an area where there was a lot of mosquitoes or bugs? Because I know, which we'll get into later with Naked and Afraid is a different story, but that's been something I've noticed on those shows. Is I'm one of those people that they just love. Like I get eaten alive. And when I see people on Naked and Afraid in the tropics, I'm like, nope, never would do that.
I know. I feel for those people. I think I got pretty lucky where we did tropics training being a temperate tropical environment.
Okay.
Because it was a lot of old growth cedar and it was very wet, but it was also very cold. And I don't remember the bugs. Even here living in Maine, everybody talks about black fly season in the summertime. I very rarely notice the bugs. So maybe I'm just the kind of person that
they're not attracted to.
They're not attracted to me.
Yeah. Very lucky.
I'm very lucky. So I've never really noticed bugs.
Well, that's good. That's definitely a benefit for those situations. I want to go back to the tropics too, with you're saying every day restarting, building a shelter, building a fire. What are the best methods for starting a fire in that kind of a condition where it's just soaking wet? Because if anyone's started primitive fires, you know how hard it is when it's dry. So what would you say are the best methods, tips, skills if someone's actually in like a pouring rain place and needs to start a fire?
Yeah, so my best advice is you have to keep the water off of wherever you're building a fire. So you have to string up a tarp. You have to get under something. Whatever you can do to block that moisture from coming down onto whatever it is that you're working on. And you need to find the driest stuff possible. The driest stuff possible. And that's looking under logs, looking under deadfalls, anywhere you can see like a natural cover, like the boughs of pine trees. If you have a thick enough pine tree, if you can get underneath that, you can usually find some dry stuff. Is it going to be 100% dry? No, but you want to find the driest thing possible. And you want to have a lot of tinder. That is number one. You need a ton of tinder people always do just this little teeny bit. And when you're putting, your smaller pieces of fuel on your kindling, if your kindling's a little bit wet, it's going to take more heat to start drying that out to get it to ignite. And if you have a lot of tinder, you get more heat because that's going to burn better. And usually you can find like dry tinder. I like to split open some dry pieces of wood because the center is going to be dry, and you can take your knife and scrape it and make shavings. That's a good way to do it. You can find, pitch wood or fat wood and do the same thing. And I mean, even just finding small pieces of wood or other types of like hair-like, thin pieces of debris under stuff. Mm-hmm. I remember one time on, like on Naked and Afraid, for example, it was a wet day and I had to build a fire. And I remember going, of all places, like along the riverbank where a lot of debris and firewood and stuff had washed up from previous floods. And, the top of the mound of debris is wet from all the rain coming down on it, but I crawled in underneath it and there's no water up in there. So I was able to grab dry material from up inside that kind of deadfall, or just a big ball of like just brush, stuff that had just gotten, wedged into a tree. And you just start looking under stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. So you have to really change how you are finding things based on what already has natural cover built in.
Yeah. It's hard. It's really, really hard when everything's wet. You have to put in a lot more effort.
Yep. Yeah. I think that's a good time to segue into, I know you have Raynaud's phenomenon, which I do as well.
It sucks.
And for those people who don't know, it is basically when your body gets cold, you get this arterial spasm and the blood circulation gets cut off from your fingers and your toes in particular. Can be very painful, goes totally numb and they'll be totally white. And then as the blood comes back in, it will hurt really bad. So you've been in a lot of situations, I imagine, where this has been probably majorly triggered. And have there been ways that you found to overcome it besides like artificial heat or, anything that you're going into a situation that you're planning for how you're going to handle this?
Yeah. I mean, I've read all the things about, going back and forth between hot and cold and training your capillaries, sitting out in the cold and putting your hands in hot water, or sitting in the heat, putting your hands in cold water, vice versa, cutting out caffeine, all the things that they recommend. I've tried them all and I still get it. I mean, maybe I'm not trying hard enough, but for me, I can tell when I'm starting to get the Raynaud's. So I notice anytime my core starts to drop, that's usually when I'll get it, because my hands will get really, really cold and super, super painful. Mm-hmm. But I usually don't lose total feeling in my hands and total use of my hands until my core temperature drops.
Right. Yeah.
So as long as I stay moving, I tend to be okay. But there's definitely times where it's like I can feel the flare up coming and I just stop what I'm doing and I just sit by the fire. I wish there was something I could do to make it go away. I've heard of people being able to make theirs go away. I guess maybe that's a homework assignment for myself to try harder, because it's such a pain in the.
I agree. I think mine's gotten worse as I've gotten older. And if I'm thinner, it's worse. And I think I always thought that if there was a more anti-inflammatory diet, maybe stuff like that would help, but it really doesn't in my case. Yeah. And I live in a colder environment, and I thought perhaps cold exposure too would really kind of benefit it, but I don't know. I haven't found it either. I know that what does help me sometimes is if I am really on top of it, and I know I'm like, my house is really cold, or I'm going to be really cold, and it's happening a lot, is taking a lot of herbs that really relax the blood vessels. So like ginger, cinnamon, what else? I can't think of what else right now, but stuff that really like actually like
warming
causes
herbs.
Yeah, warming and like vasodilating. Yeah, any of the like things that are warming, like clove. But mostly cinnamon and ginger, which people usually have. And then you can just make, a lot of tea with it and be drinking it throughout the day. Actually, sage too, because sage is like very like heat up. So things that just heat the body up too, but they also relax the blood vessels, and then that can be very helpful. But I'm not always taking that. So
I know, and I don't always have access to it. And, I know this has been a problem for me, and, I let the folks at Naked and Afraid know. Yeah. I don't get to pick where I go, but I let them know, because they'll call me, beginning of a season, they'll ask me if I'm interested in going out, and depending on what my year looks like, it's either a yes or a no. And I let them know every time. I'm like, I cannot do a cold environment. Yeah. It's a medical thing because you have to get medically screened before you go on TV anyway for any show. And I just let them know, I'm like, look, I have this medical condition. I know that it's a problem. I know that it can get bad. And I mean, if you can't use your hands out in the wild, like, what are you going to do?
Or we're just more prone to getting frostbite a lot faster than anybody else. So, you know, I've already experienced that where I felt like I was getting some permanent damage at the tips of the fingers and toes. And it's like, it's not worth it at that point.
No, it's not. I know. Just to make sure you pack some good wool gloves.
Yep. Well, so I guess speaking of Naked and Afraid, how did you go on the first time? Like, did you reach out to them? Did they reach out to you? How did you first decide to go on the show initially?
So I'll be completely honest. I've never really been much of a viewer. I don't watch the show. I didn't grow up watching it. I mean, it's been out since 2012.
Yeah, it's been a long time.
It's been a long time. I still don't watch it. You know, I'll watch my episodes, you know, because I didn't go through all that for nothing.
Right.
And I've made friends on the show. I'll watch theirs. But as far as being a regular viewer, I don't watch it.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that because it's a bad show. It's a phenomenal show. It's awesome. It's very entertaining to watch. It's very entertaining to be on. It's a great show. I just don't have cable. I don't have streaming services. You know, I'm that weird, you know, hippie nerd that I'm like, I just don't want to have all this stuff. You know, I have Wi-Fi right now, which I'll be getting rid of, you know, by the time summer rolls around. Yeah, I don't have a way to watch the show.
Yeah.
You know?
So you're not like a huge fan that was like dying to go on.
No, I wasn't a huge fan. You know, I always told myself, I was like, I would love to be on, you know, any other show, but that one. And I guess it was kind of like the naked part. I was like, I don't want to be naked on TV. I don't want to be naked, you know, anywhere but, you know, like in my house. And so what had happened, I'm trying to think what year it was. It was probably, I want to say around 2016 or 17. I got a phone call from one of my good buddies that was still in the Air Force. I'd already, you know, been out for like a year or two at this point. And he called me up and was like, hey, Cheeny, somebody is calling from the Discovery Channel. They got this survival TV show and they're looking they want a female, you know, SERE experience, you know, veteran. And, you know, they called us because, you know, the SERE schoolhouse, you can just call them apparently. So Discovery Channel called the SERE schoolhouse and was asking around. And they're like, oh man, you got to call Cheeny. And so, you know, Dawson, my friend Dawson, he's the one that called me. He's like, hey, you know, we didn't give them your information. We wanted to check with you first. And, you know, can we give them your email or something so they can reach out to you? And I said, sure, go ahead. Like, I'll entertain this.
Yeah.
And so shortly thereafter, I get contacted by some woman named AJ who's in some talent scouting thing. So I'm talking with her on the phone for a little bit and she's like trying to, you know, tell me about this show, but she hasn't told me the name of it yet. And I'm just sitting there listening. I'm like, okay. I'm like, oh, you know, like, please don't be naked and afraid. That's exactly what I thought. I was like, as long as it's not naked and afraid, this will be great. And I'm like, so like, what's the show? Like, what are you talking about? And she's like, oh, well, you know, naked and afraid. And I'm like, oh, shit. I was like, and immediately I was like, I don't think so. And, but, you know, I just had this thought in my head. I was like, you know, there's a reason why this is happening.
Yeah.
You know, like, let's just see where it goes. So I talked to AJ some more, and then I talked to some other people in the network, and I have to submit, you know, I have to do a recorded interview, like via Zoom, and, you know, meet with some of the casting people. I have to send in videos of me doing survival stuff. And, you know, I had like a couple of days to send everything in. So I'm literally going out in my parents' backyard before I have to be at work. And I'm out there like building a debris shelter, doing a quick fire. I'm doing a quick bird trap. I'm like I got like an hour or two before I have to be in work. I'm like, I'm just going to go out there. I'm just going to do whatever. I don't even want to be on the show. So I just built something real quick, videoed it, sent it into them. They fucking loved it.
Wow.
And then they fly me to Los Angeles for a day, meet the producers, chat with them for another interview. They fly me home. So
I didn't know they did all that.
They don't anymore.
Oh, okay.
They've been doing some serious budget cuts.
Now they just send people out.
Yeah, now everything's just via Zoom. But I go through all of this and, you know, I meet everybody. And then, you know, they give me a date like, hey, can you go in August, 17th this summer? And I was like, yeah, sure. So I'm all excited, you know. And then weeks go by, I don't hear anything. And then it's like a couple of days before I'm supposed to leave. And I email them and I'm like, hey, what's going on? Like, I thought we talked about me leaving, you know, in this date. And they're like, oh, well, we want to use you for next season. I was like, oh, well, that would have been nice to know. So I just, whatever. So I just go back to life. Next season rolls around. They hit me up and they're like, hey, are you interested for this year? I'm like, yes. So I had to go through the medical stuff and all that. And, it's like 2 weeks out to me getting ready to leave. And I get a call from their doctor. They have their own med team at Discovery. And they're like, hey, you have Raynaud's. That's a disqualification. You can't be on the show.
After all that.
And I was so angry. I'm like, I wasn't really like being mean to the doctor, but I was definitely raising my voice. And I'm like, hey, there's got to be a way around this. Like, can I get a note from my doctor? Like, there's got to be something that I can do.
Yeah.
They're like, well, if you can get a note from a doctor, we'll do it. But it was so close to leaving. And I'm like, I had to go through the VA and the VA takes forever. I was like, I'm never going to get this in time. So I just said, whatever, screw it. I'm not going to go on the show. It's just not meant to be. And I don't hear from them again for like 6 months. I'm thinking I'm done. Wow. I'm off the radar. And then they emailed me the next year asking me if I'm interested in being on that season. And I'm confused. I'm like, you guys medically disqualified me for Raynaud's. They're like, well, we're going to see if we can figure out a way around it. I was like, okay. So I go through everything again. I didn't fly to LA this time, but I go through all the med stuff, psych test. I do everything. I get cleared to go on back on the show. And I go.
And when did they tell you where you're going? Do they give you like a heads up?
Not really. You find out when you get your plane tickets.
Wow. So you don't even know
you don't even really
kind
know.
Of environment to prepare for?
Not really. They kind of tell you a general region.
Okay.
But it's so vast.
Yeah.
I mean, they're like, hey, do you want to go to South Africa? I mean, South Africa's a huge country.
Yeah.
You could be anywhere. And so I really don't find out the area until I'm like there. They want it to be a surprise.
Yeah.
So, but I guess to backtrack, there was a little bit of a gap between me being medically disqualified and then me finally going because that was when COVID happened.
Oh, okay.
And they didn't film for a year. So at this point, it had been 3 years since they initially contacted me. And then I get cleared. I get to go on the show. I go to South Africa. I do a tribes episode. I have a female partner, and then there's 2 males that are partnered up. We merge in the middle halfway through, and then we go as a team to day 21. I won't give out too many details in case some people haven't seen that episode. But that was my very first
called
one.
Battle of the Sexes, right?
Yeah, that was Battle of the Sexes.
Yeah.
Yep. Season 14, episode 10, or I think that's what it was, or season 10, episode 14.
Did they tell you it was going to be that Battle of the Sexes, or did you not know that either? Like, did you just think it was a regular episode with 2 people?
I don't remember. They might have told me, but I don't remember.
Okay.
It's been a while. So that was 4 years ago, was my first one.
Okay.
And it's funny because looking at where I am now versus then, I finished the episode and I thought to myself, I was like, man, I didn't really do anything. Like, I caught a couple of fish, I made it to the end, but I was like, I didn't really do anything cool. I don't know. I don't really feel like anything really stood out. Like, I made it to the end and, I didn't suffer too bad. I was like, they'll probably, it's like, I don't know if I'll get a chance to go back on, if I could do another one. I was like, I don't know if they'll call me back. I didn't think I did that great. Did good, but I don't think I did that great. And then I'm trying to think, it was almost a year later, they called me again and they asked if I'd be interested in doing a solo and, going back to Africa and doing a solo. And I was like, hell yeah, let's go. Cause it's weird. You miss it. Mm-hmm. And it's really hard for me to explain this to people if they haven't experienced something like this before. To be taken out of your everyday life, your routine, your schedule, your way of life, everything that your creature comforts, all of that stuff, and to get all of that taken away from you and to be put in a remote location with nothing. And, I'm not trying to sound like a hippie, but you're reconnecting with nature. You don't have any shoes on. You're not sleeping on a mattress or anything. You're touching the earth the entire time. You're getting that energy from the earth and you can feel it relax you in a way. There's no toxins.
Reset
you
your
reset.
body. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm literally just catching catfish out of a pond. I'm in the middle of nowhere. There's no PFAS forever chemicals in this pond. I can eat the fish. There's no plastic. There's no electricity.
Yeah.
There's no artificial light. It's a complete and total reset for your whole body. Just the energy from the earth, the clean food and water, fasting, natural sunlight, getting back into the natural rhythms of the earth. It reconnects you to Mother Nature in a way that I can't describe because I've always been an outdoorsy person, but this was something that I can't recreate on my own out here or back here. I mean, I could, but I would have to, really be out in the wilderness with nothing.
Yeah.
And, being completely self-reliant like that, because anybody can go for a day hike and you're going back to the car. You can always pack up and drive home. You're out there. You can leave if you want to, you can tap out, but you don't want to. You want to stay. You want to try to see this thing through.
Yeah.
And just that reset that you get, you crave it afterwards.
Yeah.
As miserable as that experience can be, being dehydrated and not eating for days and, having, not the best sleep in the world because you're sleeping on the ground. But man, I remember there were nights where I would look up at the sky. There's no light pollution. And just, I've seen the stars. I've seen stars that nobody in their life is ever going to be able to see, and I've seen animals and heard animal noises and just had some of the most beautiful moments of my life out there that I'll probably never, I'm like, I don't know if I'm going to have that again.
Yeah.
And it's, it gives me goosebumps just thinking about just the transformation that, a TV show called Naked and Afraid could have for your mind and your heart.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And
people
you miss
kind
it.
of write off some of it being like, well, the show's trying to create drama, which they are, I think sometimes.
It's TV. Yeah,
they're trying to make it more entertaining for people, but you can't deny that there's still a human being who was stripped down to barely anything and put into that situation and has to survive. And like, there might be camera crews there, but they're still like completely vulnerable and are being separated from all of those creature comforts and things you're used to. And your circadian rhythm is being completely reset because you're not being bombarded by artificial light. And yeah, all these positive benefits too, as well as the challenge itself and what happens with that. It's really cool. So the stuff you were mentioning, I almost feel like you were talking about the time you were on the solo one. Do you feel like that was a more profound experience for you to be alone than with other people?
In a way, yes, because at night you're completely alone. There's no camera crew.
Well, I was going to ask you, they do, so they leave at night.
They leave at night. Yep.
Okay. Do you have a little your own little thing?
It's called the diary camera. They give you this little handheld camera. Now they give you it's like a GoPro almost. But there's cameras everywhere. Everything, you're always being recorded all the time. Okay. Unless you're going to the bathroom, they'll give you're like, hey, I gotta go pee. You just kind of go off. And then sometimes if I just need a minute, I'm like, I'm just going pee. I'll be right back. And I'm like, I'll just go over and just sit in the bush and just be like, oh, get that camera out of my face.
How many people are there recording normally?
Well, it depends. So for my solo, I had one camera guy, one producer, one sound guy.
Okay, so 3 people.
Yeah. When the more cast members are out there, the more camera people, because there's more places they have to be at once. Like when you see these XLs, these big 40-day ones, there'll be, I don't want to say there's going to be like a camera person for everybody, but there'll be at least 3 cameras in the area probably. There's at least 2, because there's one person's got to get this angle, and then there's somebody with like a smaller camera. But they try to keep the crews are small, and they're spread out. Because like on XL, everybody gets split up into what is it, 4 teams of 3 or 3 teams of 4, and there's got to be a camera on everybody. So there'll at least be 3 camera people in the area.
Okay. So when you're alone, you're literally just naked with 3 men with you all the time.
Yeah, just following you around. Just following you around.
That is so awkward. Do you get over it after a point, or
you get over it so fast?
You do.
It's maybe, for me, it's like within minutes of getting out of the vehicle, taking off my clothes, and walking out into the bush.
You're like, okay, I'm in this mindset now. I don't even care that I'm naked anymore.
I don't even care. I just go right into survival mode, and I'm like, all right, I need to figure out where I'm going to sleep tonight. It might not be where I'm going to sleep for 21 days, but everything immediately is it's immediate action. How do I get through the first 24 hours?
Yep.
Where am I going to sleep? I got to get enough firewood for the night. I have to start boiling water because it takes a while for it to boil. It takes a while for it to cool. So that's usually my first thing is I find a general area where I'm going to stay. Then I'll build a fire and get water boiling. And then while that's boiling, I can multitask and I can start getting up a basic shelter, gathering more firewood for the night. And then after that, I'm like, all right, then I'll worry about the long haul. I just have to get through the first day and night.
Yeah.
But I don't even pay attention to the film crew that's following me.
Yeah. That's gotta be the only way to do it. Yeah.
Yeah. I know that I've got bigger fish to fry at the moment, and I'm like, this isn't important to me right now. And I know that I'm not the first person they filmed on this show.
Right.
I'm like the 30th naked butt they've seen, and I'm like, they've seen it before. I'm not worried about it.
Do they talk to you, or do they just pretend they're not? You're supposed to pretend they're not there. Like,
They're technically not there.
so they don't speak to you.
Nope, not unless you're doing like a daily, like the interview, when you watch the show, people are like looking at the camera.
Oh yeah, they'll
answering
ask you questions. Yeah.
Yeah, they have like questions like, so talk about your day. So talk about that fish, or, something like that. They have like prompts. But other than that, it's no contact.
And, unless you were like in a medical emergency
there's a
or something
medical
was wrong and
emergency.
you're like, I need help now.
Yep.
Yeah.
So it's very bare bones contact. In a way, it kind of makes you feel lonelier.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah,
a
like you're
person
here,
that
but
you
you're not
can't
speaking
talk
to
to.
me. That's weird.
Yeah. And at night on the solo, I mean, it was just me, and it was winter time in the area that I was at. So the nights were like 14 hours long.
Wow.
And it was a cold spot. So I would just be laying in my little bed that I made next to my fire in my shelter and just be there with my thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
And when there were days where, because I remember once, for a couple of days there in my solo, there was this crazy windstorm, just crazy, cold. And I was like, there's no point in going out. Like, my main food source is fish. There's no animals here that I can catch or kill like, it's winter. Everything's moved on. There's some large game animals, but I don't have the means to take on a sable, the thing's the size of a horse.
Mm-hmm.
I have no business getting up in that. And it was just mostly fish. And I was like, I have fish. There's a big dead catfish. I have it submerged in that icy cold creek. It's right there if I'm hungry. And it's windy as hell and it's freezing. And there's no point in me getting out of here and doing anything. So I literally just laid there for days.
Wow. So
and
after you
waited out
caught
the
that
storm.
catfish, you just stored it in cold water, and then would you just cut pieces off and cook it?
Yep.
Yeah.
I just cut off a big chunk. I would do, a little bit in the morning, a little bit in the evening. And then when I got down to the last big chunk day's worth, I ended up skipping a day of eating and just did like a fish broth, basically, boiled the bones. And then I saved that last chunk. So I was able to get a good week out of a fish.
Do they give you guys any education on, like, well, they must tell you like the hunting laws and stuff too, because
Yes,
there's always different animals that you can and can't hunt. And then what about like the plants that are edible in that specific area or stuff like that? Like, do they give you some of that education prior?
That's up to you.
Okay.
So they give you, so that's why they give you like the general area. Mm-hmm. So you can be like, okay, what grows here this time of year? What's the
so
weather
you do
like?
have to do all self-research though.
Yeah.
Huh. Okay.
Yep. And one thing that I've noticed with every, season I've been on, an episode that I've gone to, usually whatever plant or fruit is out there is not in season. Or the monkeys beat you to it.
Okay.
So, and I've never really bothered with plants out in survival because I'm like, what are you really getting from it nutrition wise? Yeah, pine needle tea is great. The vitamin C is good, gives you a little bit of boost, but you can't live on that forever. It's enough to like kind of get you by, so you're not just drinking water. But it's like, okay, I got to find bugs. I have to find fish. I have to find eggs. I have to find, easily attainable things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What was the biggest danger out there for you? I mean, I know people at night, of course, you see on these shows, like, oh, they hear a lion, and as soon as they show like a clip of a lion, I'm like, was that lion actually right there next to the tent?
I can hear lions.
But are they actually a threat? Is it kind of like here where they are? Like were you scared?
You are 100% out in the wild. I mean, in a stampede could come through at any moment. Because I mean, it's that is the water hole for the area.
Okay.
Everybody's coming there. And I remember, I have to walk up to it slowly because a herd of antelope could come running through at any moment. Or there could be a bull elephant, just around the corner. And I mean, they're huge, but a lot of times, like, you don't hear them or see them until they get close to you.
Yeah.
It's amazing how quiet they are, especially because, I mean, where we live now in the modern world, we're not vigilant like we used to be back in the day. I mean, go to the grocery store and watch people. People don't pay attention. They're oblivious of their surroundings.
Everybody.
And I like to think I'm a little more aware of my surroundings, but even then, I'm not a human 1,000 years ago. I'm a modern day human that's been indoctrinated to live a certain way. My senses are dulled. And so when I get out there, it does slowly start to come back. But I mean, I'm coming from modern life being thrown into the bush, even though, yeah, I do have the skills to get by for 3 weeks. I'm not a primitive human from 1,000 years ago.
Yeah.
You're a domesticated cat that gets to go outside.
Yeah.
That's,
exactly.
When you think about it that way. So yeah, I had to be careful. I mean, there was one episode that I watched. I think they filmed like a year after me. And I think they were in roughly the same area of South Africa, but they got charged by a bull elephant.
Oh my gosh.
And they filmed the whole thing. Like, they filmed the elephant running at them. They filmed the crew running away. They filmed the rangers running up to it and trying to scare it
out of here.
They showed the whole thing. It was wild.
Wow.
I mean, because I've seen a bull elephant up close and personal in Africa. It's, it's like 3 moose put together. I can't even describe the size of the animal. It's the biggest thing you'll ever see in your life.
Wow. That's incredible. So how did you even sleep at night with these
I
actual...
slept like a baby. I don't know how I did it. I was so tired. And I'm like, well, they don't like fire. They don't like thorns. So you build a big ring of, you cut acacia branches off the tree. The thorns are, they're like massive toothpicks. And you just build a big wall of these thorns and you build a fire, and animals know that fire means humans, and because there's poachers in Africa. So, the animals are smart. Then they stay away.
Wow. Yeah.
So I slept like a baby. I mean, I know that if a leopard really wanted to get me, it could jump over the thorns. The baboons, I mean, they're in troops of like 30 to 40.
Yeah, baboons can be scary.
Yeah, they're big. They're the size of a full-grown male. They're very aggressive, very territorial. And on my first episode, there was, I don't know, it was one of the days I had to just hang out for hours, over by the watering hole and wait, because I could see a troop of baboons hanging out in the trees where my shelter was.
Oh my gosh.
And they were just there. And I'm like, well, I can't go back to the shelter. So I just hung out there, built a fire, boiled my water right by the water hole. And I was, well, I can't go anywhere. There's 40 baboons hanging out in my shelter. That was the one thing I was most scared of, because anything territorial with no fear.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like the lion,
very
they
sharp
don't really
teeth.
care. Very sharp teeth. Yeah. I mean, lions have been known to attack humans, but for the most part, it's like black bears here in Maine.
Yeah.
They don't want anything to do with humans.
Yeah.
They'll generally avoid you unless you do something to provoke them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
but I slept like a baby.
Well, probably your body's so exhausted anyway.
I was so tired.
The effort you're putting out with such minimal food. So that makes sense. So I feel like the alone experience, you get a little bit more of that like spiritual back to the earth, like really have to sit with your thoughts, like you said. But as far as being afraid, it seems like having a partner or other people there might be beneficial for that. Just that you're not like completely alone dealing with this stuff, or maybe just food acquisition that you have, like when they do the XL and then all the people come together, it's usually like a couple people hunt some kind of bigger game. And then if they're nice, they share it. What was it on that
the group
XL
ones? Yeah. So I got the chance to do a group one with Last One Standing, and
Last One Standing is what it was called. Yeah.
Yeah. And, the group one, I honestly, I loved the group dynamic, because, you want to talk about going back in time to what humans used to be.
Mm-hmm.
To be a human out in the wild in a band, your brain goes right back to, that tribal mindset. You're like, these are my people. We, together we can do great things. We can divide and conquer. And you build a really tight bond with them, because you're all going through the same thing. Like in the military, we all go through the struggles of training and the hardships, and going through really, really difficult things with another human being is so bonding.
Yes, definitely.
We got trauma bonding, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So
friends for life after that.
Friends for life after that. And so the group ones were great, and I remember being out there with Matt Wright, who's an amazing bow hunter, and, he would get a kill, or he would find, one of the food caches that they had out there. And Matt is a solid guy. Yeah. Heart of gold, great dude. He's like, it doesn't matter if we're competing against each other, whatever it is, Matt will share. And he doesn't expect anything in return. He's just a good guy.
Yeah.
And, that was the most, I remember, on Last One Standing, when I, was it season 1, when we were out there in Africa, we got this like Impala food cache, and we're all sitting around the fire at night, naked in the dirt, roasting meat over an open fire. And I mean, we picked that animal clean.
Yeah.
We even boiled the bones down until no more, juice came out of the bones. We used the whole animal.
Yeah.
And I mean, it doesn't get more primal than that. And that was like, I remember sitting out there, it's dark. I'm looking up, I can see the Milky Way, and I'm just being handed little pieces of roasted meat. And I'm just sitting around laughing with a bunch of naked people, like a bunch of little tribesmen.
And you're like, this is the life.
This is the life, And then, a couple of days later, Dan and Gary get that huge honey score, and we're just gorging ourselves on honey like the Maasai. And I'm like, this is what humans used to do. Like, we'd find carbs and we would just eat till we were blue in the face, and then we'd sleep.
Yeah.
You know, unlike nowadays where you can just go open your pantry and, you know, you can eat corn chips until the bag's gone. And you're like, ugh. It's not fun when you get to do it every day, but when you get a big score like that.
Yeah. I think about that all the time when I think about humans eating carbohydrates or sugar. I really should say sugar, especially because you think about berries and honey, how little we would encounter that in real life. Or it would only be seasonal, or you do find this amount and then you gorge yourself on it and store that fat up and then use that fat, as opposed to today where it's just constant, you know, a constant stream, and it's so unnatural and it's just not what our body wants or needs at all. And what an incredible treat it would be to find that in the wild when you've only been eating meat and like a little bit of wild edibles.
Fish and drinking water and just going days without food. Yeah. You know, and then just to have that. And I remember when they walked into camp with all of that honey, I couldn't believe what was happening. Yeah. I was so in shock. I was like, is this real life? Is that, I mean, it was pounds of honeycomb.
That's amazing.
I mean, pieces as big as a turkey plate on Thanksgiving, multiple pieces and just dripping with honey, and it had larvae inside of it with all that fat.
So you eat the larvae too?
Oh, I ate everything.
Yeah. Wow.
And just the mixture of the honey and the larva fat mixed together, it was like eating honey mixed with butter. I was drunk on
Maybe you should bring that to the U.S., like honey larva.
Oh my God.
Candy.
Oh, I mean, I could think of a couple people that would buy it, but oh my God, it was so good. Even just thinking of it, I still remember it, and that was years ago.
Yeah. Wow.
Oh, it was the best. I'm like, I get the true human experience. I'm in the dirt, I'm naked, I'm living off the land, I'm away from civilization, just eating meat and fish. I just got a huge honey score. And I'm trauma bonding with these strangers now that I love more than the people I grew up with. Like, what an amazing human experience.
I love that, because I think sometimes people, and maybe the show tries to do this a little bit too, to create, enemies, or like there's
my God,
animosity
started on that. Yeah.
But people think, if humans break down somewhere or there's a disaster, it's going to be like Lord of the Flies. And of course, there's always going to be an
asshole.
Stuff like that when we lose order. But a lot of situations like that, I think people do come together, especially in a traumatic situation or in a survival situation. You come together, you work together. There'll always be arguments or disagreements, but people are stronger together. They're stronger in community. And ancient people absolutely work together to survive and to be successful.
Yeah, we're built to cooperate. And when you look back, and I love history, like you look back over, thousands of years, yes, there was conflicts. Yes, we fought over resources. We fought over status. We fought over women. We fought over all of those things, but we also came together and we had, thousands of miles worth of trade routes. We set aside our differences because, these people, they lived more inland and they wanted salt. The people that were up in the mountains, they had more access to a certain type of food or metal or wood, and we would trade, and humans, we are designed to work together. Yeah, we fight sometimes, but what animal doesn't do that?
Yep. Yep. We need to figure out some ways to bring that back to today.
I know. And, I think when you look at these more, primitive societies or groups of people, there's no money. There's no currency, so you really learn what's important. And especially out there on Naked and Afraid, like food is the most important thing. Like for you to take more than your share or to hide food or anything like that, it's basically a cardinal sin of Naked and Afraid. Like that is the one thing where it's like, you can say there's a competition or whatever, and it's like, oh, you won that animal skin. That's your animal skin. You won. But we always had this agreement. Like if we win, it's a lot of food. If it's a whole, it's a small impala, dressed, that thing's like 40 pounds of meat dressed. Who is going to eat that much meat in one sitting before it goes bad? So that was our rule. Like we will share any food that we get. And even like, whenever I had a partner on the show, I caught the fish, technically my fish, but you're my partner. And, you did some other things that day to help the team. You gathered firewood. You're not going to build your own fire off to the side with the wood that you gathered. You're going to share that wood. So for me, I'm going to share that food. Yeah, food, it's the great uniter of humanity when you think about it. Every celebration that we have or anytime we get together ever, there's always food, whether it's a holiday, birthday, funeral, wedding, it's always centered around food. And we're the only animal that cooks when you think about it, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's what makes us human. And that's why it's the great uniter.
Yeah. Sometimes on the show you see that people aren't pulling their own weight per se, or that's kind of what causes some issues.
Mm-hmm. It's easy to get some animosity sometimes towards your partner.
Yeah, or feel like you're just doing more than the other person if they're kind of like lying around or they're not feeling well.
Yep.
Did that happen to you in any of your shows besides the alone one?
Yeah. With my first one with my partner, I mean, she got really sick.
Oh yeah, I do remember.
She got really sick. Her body, I don't know, she just couldn't handle it. But she was really, really sick. And, it would be easy to get annoyed with somebody. She's like, I'm doing all the work. I'm constantly going back and forth to the watering hole to get water. I'm constantly, doing this, that, or whatever to not just help, me keep going, but also with you. And, I'm human. I did get frustrated sometimes, but I always had to remind myself every day, I'm like, she's really sick. And she is really trying to hang in there. Like I would come back from the water hole and she gathered firewood. She's puking her guts out and she's still dragging wood back to the shelter. And I'm like, that's pretty awesome. Like, thank you, Rebel. I really did appreciate her for everything that she did. And, in that episode, there's a scene where I'm sitting there with her and I'm having a serious heart to heart because she's been sick the entire time and she's not getting better. And, I just let her know, like, I'm happy to continue pulling this team along. I want to help you get to day 21, but I can't do it at risk of me, something happening to me to pull me out of this challenge. Mm-hmm. I came here for a reason and I will help you. But at some point, if it means me leaving as well, like I have to draw some sort of a line. Like, and we have to use common sense here. Like, you're not getting better.
Yeah.
And we're a quarter of the way in. So we need to figure something out to get you better. Or you need to listen to your body before you do something that's going to jack your health up for weeks, months. I mean, there's people that get parasites out there that affects them for life. There's people that have, they get weird, the body, when it goes through something stressful like that, not everybody bounces back well. Mm-hmm. You might have to go on medication for, if you did something to your kidneys when you were out there or your liver or something.
Yeah.
It's serious stuff.
I can't imagine how miserable it would be to be like puking your guts out there. Like that it just must be awful.
And I would hate, because, halfway through we had to merge with the guys and we ended up walking, I don't know how many miles, but it's, Africa in August. It's hot.
Yeah.
It's dry.
And she's already dehydrated.
And we went a long ways. And in my mind, I'm like, if anything happens to you while we're moving, I don't know what the closest road is. Mm-hmm. I don't know if we can get you out here fast enough. Like, heat injuries are dangerous.
Yep.
It's not good for your brain. It's not good for your kidneys. You know more about that medically than I do. I just know basic stuff from the military. I know it's not good.
Yeah.
And I'm like, and you got to see, like, is it worth having something that's going to affect you for the rest of your life because you wanted to look a certain way on a television show? Like, come on.
Yeah. No,
you can always come back and try again. Like, is the juice worth the squeeze here? For me, I want to live to be 100. If there's anything that's going to happen to me that's going to cause me to grow old and poorly or have a condition, like, I don't take any prescription medications and I'd like to keep it that way for as long as I live. I am healthy and I want to stay that way. And if there's anything that's going to interfere with that or make my life worse in some way, shape, or form, I'm like, okay, so what are the risks here?
Yeah.
Is it worth the risk or no? Is it an ego thing? Like, oh, I want to make 21 days because 21 days? No. I mean, and I've walked away from challenges before because I looked at the bigger picture and I was like, whatever outcome isn't worth whatever this I'm going through right now.
Yeah.
And that's a very hard thing to do and it's a vulnerable thing to do. It's not easy to walk away from something. And I don't know. I always just try to look at the bigger picture. I'm like, I'm doing this for me and nobody else. Mm-hmm. Like, I don't care what anybody else thinks. So I'm the one that has to live with myself for the rest of my life.
Yeah, absolutely. Putting illness aside, what do you utilize for like sticking it out for mental toughness? You seem to have a really positive mindset on the episodes that I've watched. I mean, I saw you get frustrated a little bit. I think with the fire, when it was wet and you were trying to make the fire and you're like, I have Raynaud's, I gotta make a fire or something like that. But I think for the most part, you have like a very positive attitude, or you stay really kind of grounded, neutral. Like you seem like you're okay. Whereas other people get really, really emotional.
They get in their heads.
And that seems really, really important. I mean, so what do you utilize to keep yourself going or to stick with something? Like if you've set a goal in mind and then stuff gets tough, what do you do?
So in SERE training, we always talk to our students, and we had to talk to them about this. This was like an objective, positive mental attitude. Mm-hmm. We call it, or PMA is what we called it. And just, I mean, yeah, it's all right there in the title. Like you have to focus on small victories. You have to stay positive, because the minute you start thinking negatively, it's a very slippery slope down into the, the pit of despair. And, I always think to myself, like, there's always two ways to handle something or to go through something. One of my favorite Stoic quotes is, everything has two handles. You can pick it up by one or the other. And it's usually like, there's a positive way and there's a negative way. Mm-hmm. And so I always try to focus on that. I'm like, okay, what's the better way to do this? And, one of these, this is all going to be over soon. Like, and I'm going to have this memory. Do I want it to be a memory of me overcoming adversity and pushing through a really hard time? Or do I want it to be me saying, screw it?
Yeah.
And I guess it helps too with like all this being on, TV. I know that a lot of people are going to watch it, and I know that somebody's going to watch it and it's going to be a motivation for them in their life in some way, shape, or form. Because I think about, where I came from growing up, and all the different directions that I went in life is all because of something that I read or saw somebody else do. And so I think, I could be that person for somebody. Like I could say something or do something right now in this moment to overcome this problem. Somebody young is going to see that, and it's going to stick with them. And that could be what helps them in the future.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So that's kind of what I go through. And then, I don't know, I've just always kind of had that mindset where I'm like, I can't quit now. I haven't, and again, another favorite Stoic quote of mine is, if it is endurable, then endure it. If it's not, then you've met your end, basically is what it says. And so I just ask myself, like, can I keep going? Yes. Okay, I'm going to keep going. Because we all hit a wall at some point. Everybody's wall's in a different spot.
Yeah. I found for myself, if I give myself an out, I take it. Like as long as for me, if I set my mind to this and I say there is no out, you are doing this, I will do it no matter how hard it is. So I've just found that, and with anything, if I like, it might even just be as simple as, maybe I don't have to go to the gym tomorrow because like I have a lot to do and I'm kind of sore. Like, what I mean? Then I'm probably not going to go. But if I'm like, nope, I have to go, I'm going, go this many days this week. That's what I'm setting my mind to. So I feel like it's pretty similar. Like unless there was something really tragic that happened on a situation like that, if I was like, I am staying, I'm on TV, everyone's watching this, there's no way I'm leaving unless I'm dying, then I'm going to stay.
It's so important for people to do difficult things.
Yeah.
It's so important. It's such a great character building thing. And I'm 35. I've had plenty of times in my life where I was like, this is too hard. I don't really want to do this. And I walked away, and I always look back and I go, I cannot believe I walked away.
Yeah.
And there are plenty of mornings where I don't want to go to the gym.
Yep.
But I'm like, you're going to go because you're going to be happy when you get there. You're going to feel great when you leave, and it's going to set your day off on the right foot. I used to do cold plunges. I did them a lot last year. I didn't do them much this year. But every morning, it's like 6:30, 7 o'clock. It's still dark out. There's snow on the ground. They're in a robe, no shoes on. I'm walking over to my cold tub, and I'm like breaking the ice to get in. And I'm like, I do not want to get in this thing. But then I get in it, and I'm like, just wait, breathe. You breathe, you go through your thing. You give it a minute and a half, and then you're like, okay, I'm done. And then I would get out, and I would feel so good after. I would jump right back in. And then I would get out, and then I'd go take a hot shower. And for the rest of the day, I felt amazing.
Yeah.
And, I'm like, every morning I wake up and I go, I don't want to get in there. And I'm like procrastinating. I'm doing this, I'm doing that. And I'm like, you're just like, get in the tub. So I just get naked, go outside, get in the tub, get out, and I'm done. And every day I'm like, I'm happy I did that. And, I've had enough times in my life, like I said, I've walked away, regretted it. So when I am faced with a new, or I get a chance to do something similar to it again, I'm like, last time I walked away, this time I'm not. This time I'm going to give it everything I have. And yeah, overcoming adversity is so good for you. Yep. And I feel like nowadays, so many people, they just go, man, I don't feel like it.
Yeah. It's
or
so
I'll do
easy.
it this way. It's easier. Life is doing things you don't want to do.
Yeah.
I remember growing up and my parents making me do all these chores and, just, anything in general when you're a kid, you're like, oh, I don't want to do it. But you get forced to do it anyway. And that just, I don't know, it's a good character building thing. And I don't know, I look at kids these days and they don't want to do it, so they don't, and their parents don't fight them on it.
Yeah, that happens a lot. Whether it's food, which I'm really passionate about food and people not feeding their kids anything but like kids' food, which I talk about that a lot. But yeah, I'm just forcing them to do this. I don't want to force them to do anything, or letting them quit sports. I've made my kids stay in things that they didn't want to, and then I have let them quit a couple of times depending on the situation. But like, I tell them all the time, just what you said. In life, you're going to do a lot of things that you don't want to do because you are, no matter what. You can't set them up for success in life by doing
everything for them.
Yeah, letting their life be so comfortable and sit on video games all day, eat chicken nuggets and French fries, and not help around the house, and expect that they're going to be like a highly motivated person, or be able to function well in society. Where to be your best, you have to push yourself and work hard at whatever it is that you are passionate about, or whatever your goals are for your life. But I even see this in some kids now where they don't even have goals.
I know. I'm like, so what are you doing every day to be better?
Yeah.
How are you trying? Like, I go to the gym, I eat good, I try to be involved in the community. Like, what can I do to help improve not just my life, but the lives of those around me?
Yeah.
And, if you see trash on the side of the road, if you can pick it up, pick it up. If you see something that's not right, how can you make it right? And, even just going out and doing these knot tying classes in the evenings, that's me going out there and I'm teaching a skill to people. Like, they're they're adults and they don't know how to tie, some basic knots. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. Because the world we live in now, you don't really need to know knots anymore unless you're camping or whatever. But it's another thing where you're learning, you're growing, you're solving some sort of a problem, you're working together. And I mean, I have so much fun at these knot tying classes.
Yeah.
And everybody there has so much fun. I always get compliments of like, man, I didn't know tying a square knot could be so rewarding or so satisfying. It's just, I don't know. I'm kind of going off on a little digressing, but.
No, but it's a good point, because anytime I've ever taken myself out of my comfort zone, I don't know if you're even saying that, like, just going out at night and teaching this class, maybe like but then it ends up being so rewarding for you and for the people. But there's a lot of situations like I'm going somewhere, I have social anxiety, I put myself out there. It's always scary, but I've never regretted it anytime I've done it. Anytime I've put myself into a situation like that, it's always been worth it. Yeah.
It's so important, because everybody gets into their little groove.
Yeah.
It's easy to come home at the end of the day from work and make dinner and just veg. There's some nights where I'm like, do I really want to leave my house and drive an hour to Portland to go be there from 6:30 to 9 o'clock at night and then drive an hour home when I could be home in my normal routine in the wintertime being cozy.
Cozy with your cat.
Cozy with my cat, and just, I'm like, no, I said I was going to do this. I want to teach people stuff. I want to get people, because everybody gets the winter blues and the doldrums. Yeah. I'm like, let's get out of the house. Let's go be social. That's the two things that people bitch about so much in the winter. Like, it's lonely and I'm just inside all the time. Well, let's fix that problem. Let's go together. And, you're doing something that you've never done before. And a lot of people, they can't tie the knots right the first couple of times. They're failing in front of strangers, which is never a good feeling. But by the end of it, everybody can tie every single knot. They're laughing. They've made new friends. They've gotten over that social anxiety. And yeah, they did something that they wouldn't normally do. It's this like fun, novel thing. And it's like, some people, it's probably the highlight of their week. Like, oh, I did this super fun thing Thursday night.
Yeah.
I'm glad I went.
Tell me more about the knot tying. Like, what are these different knots and why do we need to know them?
So these knot tying classes. So I teach a knot class at Moose Ridge every summer, and it's a big hit. People love it. I've started doing multiple knot classes over the whole weekend because it fills up, and I know there's other classes that people want to take, and people are usually always conflicted, like, oh, I wanted to do this, spoon carving class, but it was during your knot class, and I really wanted to carve spoon. So I'm doing multiple classes there, but so Tim, he's like my best friend. Actually, he is my best friend. And, we were talking about this, last fall. I'm like, man, like, I like teaching knots at Moose Ridge, and, you have your classes in the winter. Like, what if I did a knot tying class, but then advertised for Owl Eyes? I want to start meeting new people. I want to, keep my teaching skills going throughout the year, so I'm not just teaching during the summer. So, Tim, why don't I go teach knots at breweries? You carve spoons and wooden animals at breweries. I could do something up here doing knots. And so we're like, all right, great idea. So we reached out to like a dozen or so different places, and we got a lot of responses back. We got a lot of things scheduled. And so I go usually Portland, Biddeford, Dover, New Hampshire, and I do 8 different knots, and it takes about an hour and a half to 2 hours depending on the class size. So I do the square knot, which is used to tie 2 lines of equal diameter together to increase the length of your line. I do the sheet bend, which is another way to tie 2 lines together, but they're different sizes. The square knot won't really work if the ropes are too different in size.
Okay.
And then from there, I do the slip loop. Then I do a fixed loop, which is the bowline. I do a girth hitch, which is a way to attach line to a tarp or anything with grommets. I do the trucker's hitch, a couple different variations of a trucker's hitch, the clove hitch, the daisy chain, and the adjustable loop hitch. And these are all very useful for stringing up tarps or doing some sort of tarp shelter. And yeah, like usually when people come in, they know the square knot or the slip loop, and that's it. And so I go through and we do every knot very in depth. We practice as much as we need to for each one until everybody's consistently getting it. And, last night was my largest class. I had 10 people signed up, and I always kind of look and see who are my stronger students in the group. And if they're getting the knots a lot faster than everybody else, I'll usually have them coach the students that are having more trouble, because you remember 90% of what you teach and like 10% of what you hear, or 10% of what you read. And like roughly around the same for, if you watch somebody or you're just listening to somebody, you don't really retain all of it. The more hands-on you do, the better. So that's what I try to do. And then
I find, do you tell them to practice after? Because I find that I've learned things like this sometimes, and then if it's been a long time, I just forgot how to do it.
Yeah. I do tell them to practice. I tell them, YouTube's your friend.
Yeah.
Go back onto the Eventbrite page that this was on. All the knots are listed there, so you have that list. I tell them they can take pictures or videos during the class, whatever they want to do. They can write down the knots as we go along, like whatever they need to do to remember it. And yeah, YouTube's your friend. Like, I have learned so many different cool knots via YouTube. I've actually learned most of the stuff that I know nowadays from YouTube. And, you can tell them all you want, like, hey, make sure you guys, practice. It's a perishable skill. It's up to them, but they're usually pretty fired up after the class. Everybody's always laughing, smiling, having a good time.
Yeah.
And, yeah, it's a lot of fun. I mean, there's always usually beer involved, so that always makes people a little more trouble. But I try to do the class at, kombucha places, or I'm trying to get into libraries or coffee shops for people that, don't want to drink alcohol. But a lot of breweries nowadays have non-alcoholic options.
Yeah, and they have good food usually too, so you don't have to go there just for the beer. Yeah,
you can go there
awesome.
for food and get, you don't have to cook and do dishes that night. You can try something new. Because, I meal prep, so any chance I get to go out and have somebody else cook for me and something different that I haven't been eating all week, yeah, I'm on board. So
yeah. Well, Cheeny, I think the last thing I want to ask you is just how do you bring some of these things into your regular life? Are you staying physically fit and prepared at all times for potential survival situations? Are you doing certain things to stay prepared in that regard? Or also just bringing some of that like peace back from nature, like you were talking about? How do you bring that into your everyday?
Yeah, so for me, with my military background, SERE background, and actually going out there and doing things, preparedness is key. And I know that like food is the hardest thing to get in survival. Like, you can build a fire and all that stuff, but so for me, I always have, stuff saved up. I have food saved, I have ammunition saved, I've got things saved up for emergency medical supplies, all that stuff. I do work out and stay fit. I, try to get my 8 hours of sleep, drink water, avoid toxic things. In an emergency, the famous quote, like, I don't have to outrun the bear, I just have to outrun you. So, I don't have to be able to win in every situation, but as long as I'm in, like, the top compared to everybody else around me, like, okay, at least I have a chance here. Because you never know who's going to be relying on you in an emergency. So I always want to make sure, like, can I be strong enough not only to support myself, but can I support others? So, during COVID, like, I learned a lot of, like, hey, I might not be able to leave my house for months. So do I have enough stuff in my house to last me months?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then just, I don't know, life is just fun and full of surprises. Every day is different, especially out on Naked and Afraid. You'd have a moment where you'd just be like, man, I didn't eat anything yesterday. I don't know if I'm going to find anything today. You just kind of get in this mindset of, you think you know what's going to happen. And then all of a sudden, like, Dan comes up to you with 5 pounds of honey. Or you catch, a 12-pound catfish, or something crazy happens where you're like, wow, that was like a miracle out of left field. So I guess, yeah, just trying to keep that positive mental attitude and everything. Right now, it's so easy for everybody to be so down in the dumps about something, or, it's like, I heard this term the other day, like, we're in the oppression Olympics, like, everybody's competing to be the top victim in some way, shape, or form, and I'm like, I'm not, life is actually really good if I stop and take a second to look around and look at my life and look at everything around me, and I'm like, life's not really that bad. It's just the news telling me that it's bad.
Right.
So I just try to stay, out of that crap and just trying to stay positive with everything. I'm like, yeah, I'm not going to make $100,000 this year, but I can walk on 2 legs. I can run.
You have your health, and that's priceless.
Yeah. Instead of looking at what you don't have, look at what you do have.
Yep.
And I feel like right now, humans are designed to spot conflict, adversity, dangerous things, because that's just going to kill us. We're not really designed to look at, focusing on the good. We're built to focus on the bad because we don't want to die. And so you're kind of going against nature that way. But yeah, just every day, just think about all the good you have in your life. Because I think people would be surprised they have a lot more than they think.
Yeah, I agree. And when you take away social media and you're pared down to just nature, you don't even know all these horrible things that are out there.
That's true. It's true. If it's not, it can't hurt me. The best thing I did for myself recently, in like the last month, I took all social media off my phone.
Yeah.
So I have to wait until I'm home. I have to actually get on my laptop. I have to actually log in. I don't save any of my passwords. I have all these like firewalls, if you will, to go onto social media, and I think, do I need to? No. Probably check some of my messages on Instagram because I'm talking to these breweries for these knot classes. After that, I have no business being on there. And nor do I want to be.
Yeah.
And man, I'm like the happiest person I know right now because I don't have all that negative crap in my face, in my hands, there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
We get sucked into it, and
it's designed to suck us in.
Yep.
So once you know that, you can...
Well, Cheeny, even though you're not on social media, really, do you have any socials that if people wanted to reach out to you or find you that they could find you on, or are you going to be off grid?
No, I do have Instagram because as, crappy as the news is and as how negative as some people can be right now, I'm not going to let that get in the way, but get in between me and my friends that I want to keep in touch with, because I have fun messaging, threads with Tim and some other friends of mine. We send memes back and forth to each other and it's funny, or I follow a lot of gardening stuff and I'm like, I'm learning so much. Because social media is a tool, it's like
there is good stuff. Absolutely. Like so much great learning things, and
there's so many great things. And that's another thing too. Like, I'm not focusing on the negatives of social media like everybody else does. I'm like, I've learned so much and discovered so many cool things because of Instagram. I'm like, I'm not getting rid of it because some people decide to be jerks on it. Like, no, because then they win. I'm not going to let them win. I'm going to make sure I don't see that. But yeah, so again, another tangent. I am on Instagram. I have a private Instagram that's just for like close friends and stuff like that. But I do have a public one that I made, I don't know, a couple months ago because of like all the naked and afraid stuff. Because, I don't want to miss opportunities to do podcasts like this or to reach out to other people or get involved in, more veterans programs and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So on Instagram, it's Cheeny. And then was that little underdash, not the middle?
Underscore, yeah.
Cheeny _no_ pants. So Cheeny No Pants is my Instagram thing. Because I have a friend, she calls me Cheeny Pants or Pants because my last name is Plant. And so I just thought that'd be funny. Like, Cheeny No Pants. So I'm not wearing any pants. And so that's the best way people can reach out to me on there. And yeah, that's the spot.
All right. Well, this was great. Thank you for coming on today. Bye, Cheeny. Thank you.
If you enjoyed this conversation, please take a moment to leave a review. In that review, I would love to hear what topics you'd like to see covered next and which guests you'd love to hear from in future episodes. You can connect with me on Instagram at Original Being Podcast, and be sure to follow, like, and share the podcast on all platforms to help spread the word. Thanks for listening.